So Exodus chapter 24, verses 3 to 11. When Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, they responded with one voice, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in bowls, and the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey." Moses then took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words." Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of the Israelites. They saw God, and they ate and drank.
The second reading is from Jeremiah, chapter 31. "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt. Because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, 'Know the Lord,' because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more."
And then from Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, a living sacrifice. "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will."
And from Mark 14, "While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, 'Take it, this is my body.' Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank from it. 'This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many,' he said to them. 'Truly, I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God.'"
Good morning. Today we gather not just to hear words of promise, but to respond to them. We've already heard quite a lot of words today, words of promise and confession and commitment, and we will speak many more. in a moment as we renew our covenant with God. But before we do, I want us to reflect on what it means to live as God's people, bound not by obligation alone, but by love and relationship. You might remember that before our Advent series began, we were exploring the real God that we follow. A God who is not distant, not theoretical, not abstract, but very real and present, caring, inviting us into a life lived with him. Today, as we think about covenant, we move from knowing the God that we live with to considering how we might live with him. So God is there available to us, offering to come alongside us. We literally hear that come to its culmination in the Christmas story. As Emmanuel is born, God with us, God comes into our lives. The only thing that we have left to do then, to decide, is how will we respond to God's coming? How will we respond to the fact that God wants to live life alongside us? So what can we learn about being real people living with that real God? In Exodus 24, we read how God's people stood at the foot of the mountain. Moses reads the book of the covenant, and the people responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said." And then God made a promise, a covenant, and it was sealed with blood. Now, I know the idea of blood can sound dramatic, perhaps even a little bit frightening. But the point is this: covenant is about relationship. If we are related to someone, it's often through blood, isn't it? And what's the other way that we could be related to someone? If it's not through blood, it's through marriage. Thank you. Through marriage, which is also a promise, a covenant, if you like, for some, where we promise to be with another person for the rest of our lives. This is about God saying, "I will be your God and you will be my people." This isn't just a list of rules that God lays down. It's a connection that shapes everything, a connection that we must pay attention to. And on Christmas Eve, Charlotte and I have started a new tradition because we both love the cinema. Any other cinema lovers in? A few people. Wonderful. Well, this sermon is for you then. Everyone else, I'm sorry. Between the Christingle service and the midnight service, we go to Crawley and use our Cineworld Unlimited cards to watch a film. And we tend to do that at other times as well. And this year, actually, this wasn't Christmas Eve, but never mind. We went to see Avatar: Fire and Ash. Has anyone heard of the Avatar series before? A few people. Wonderful, even better. For those of you who don't know, Avatar is set on a planet called Pandora, which is rich in life. At the peak of that life are the Na'vi, huge blue beings that look a lot like humans, but with some differences. They believe in Ewa, a deity-like presence that represents the connectedness of all life. The Na'vi live in harmony with plants, animals, and the world around them. Through a special connection in their hair, they can link with other creatures and even the planet itself. Some even believe with Ewa herself. The films, because there are 3 of them, show humanity's attempts to exploit Pandora, destroying forests and killing creatures. The humans fail in large part because they do not understand or value this interconnectedness. It's a powerful reminder that life is relational. Everything matters and everything is connected. Watching the final film, though, there was a moment where the connections were highlighted on the screen, and it looked to me like cells all linked together. It reminded me of just how closely related everything on Earth is. As many of you know, I have a bit of a biology background, and I enjoy every now and then delving back into that. And it reminded me that we share 50% of our genes with a banana. And 98.5% of our genes with a chimpanzee. And whilst that might just sound like a really fun scientific fact, For me, it's also spiritual, because all life has been created by God, and we are invited to live in relationship with all that God made. We are invited to realize that everything that God made is connected through him. We are invited into a relationship that binds all things together. Blood, as dramatic as it can feel, was in biblical times thought to be the essence of life. In Exodus, the sprinkling of blood was a vivid way to show that the covenant God makes with his people is about life shared, life promised, life given and received. It's a reminder that covenant is relational, not abstract, not legalistic, but a living connection between God and us, and through us with the whole world he has made. If you join in the covenant prayer in a little while, you will be committing to live out a relationship with a creator God. But living in a relationship is just the beginning. Living with God and living in that relationship also means we have to live out that relationship. I have a relationship with my mum, a much better one now than I did a few years ago, partly because we are closer than we were, geographically speaking. We see each other much more often, therefore our relationship flourishes. How often do we choose to acknowledge, to remember, to come into that presence actively in our own minds to God? God is always with us, that is a fact. But how often do we choose to acknowledge and pay attention and invest in that relationship? For living in that relationship, living with God, also means that we are transformed. Living with God means being transformed. Jeremiah's promise of a new covenant reminds us that God doesn't just call us to obey rules, God transforms us. God writes his law on our hearts. God changes us from the inside out. Paul in Romans 12 picks up that theme. He calls us to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God, and to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Living with God is not about copying a pattern from the world. It's about allowing God to renew us from the inside out, shaping our thoughts, our desires, and our actions. There were several moments, again, in that Avatar film that illustrated that transformation beautifully. The Na'vi have their own customs and practices which are disrupted by humanity's arrival. In the last film, there is a moment reminiscent of Abraham being asked to sacrifice Isaac. Jake, a human who has become a Na'vi, I won't go into the details of how he's done that, believes that the will of Ewa may require him to kill Spider, his adopted human son, who happens to be the son of his enemy, to prevent humanity from gaining the precious knowledge of how Spider is able to breathe the air that is otherwise toxic to humans. It's a painful moment. But Jake and Neytiri, that's Jake's wife, realized that to kill Spider would make them no different from the humans that they oppose. Instead, they must find another way, a solution that comes from understanding compassion and loyalty, not just following a simple rule. Similarly, the sentient sea creatures, the Tulkun, normally pacifist, are hunted by humanity for a substance within them that halts human aging. But they are persuaded to join the Na'vi in defending their lives. Even beings committed to non-violence are transformed by compassion and loyalty. Relationships, a shared purpose and trust in those to whom they are connected. From the inside out, transformation begins with the way that we relate to others, to life, and to the divine. Just as Jake and the Na'vi are reshaped by their experience of Ewa and one another, God invites us into a relationship that changes our hearts, our minds, and our choices. Transformation is not about coercion or conformity. It is about being renewed from within, so that our outward actions reflect the love, the justice, and the mercy of God that we spoke about when we were exploring the real God. It is this same transformation that covenant calls us to today. God does not merely demand obedience. God invites us to be a part of his life, to share in his love, and to be shaped by it. Our promises, commitments, and even our struggles become part of a living relationship, a covenant that flows from God into us and from us into the world around us. Because covenant is about commitment to God and a relationship with God, but it is also a commitment to sharing God's values, to caring for others. Because living in covenant means living in community. Moses and the Israelites make their covenants as a community together. And so too will we do that today. The covenant that we renew today is not for ourselves, or not just for ourselves, perhaps I should say. It binds us to God and to one another. We are called to serve, to care, and to watch over one another as Christ does. Life is precious. Living with God means that we begin to care about the things that God cares about. And God continues to care about that which we care about. How many of you have ever been in love? Did you notice, for some of us this might be longer ago than others, did you notice when you first met that person that made you fall in love with them, that actually you started to pay attention to the things that they liked? I remember that, well, until I met Charlotte, I had no interest in listening to brass music whatsoever. In fact, I had very little interest in music whatsoever. So too, as we commit ourselves to love God, we commit ourselves to the things that matter to God, to others. Just like that moment where Jake chose Spider's life over hiding a secret, God chooses life. To all those guilty of much, God forgives. God shows mercy. To all those who are left behind and belong nowhere else, God adopts them through the blood of Christ into his family. In that family, as dysfunctional as we may be, we learn to value life and the gifts of others. We don't always find it easy, and we sometimes make mistakes, but we manage to forgive one another. We help to carry one another's burdens and cover each other's weaknesses. There are many more references I could make to Avatar: Fire and Ash, but I'll let you watch the movie for yourselves if you want to. But we do all of this because we continue to learn what love looks like from the source of all love, God, God's self. As well as renewing our annual covenants today, we will also be commissioning our pastoral visitors and home group leaders. When we do that, we are reminded that God's covenant flows through ordinary people doing ordinary acts of love. We commission these pastoral visitors, these home group leaders, to make sure that we have some care for one another in our community. But it is a responsibility in which we all share. Each promise we make, each commitment we take on is part of a bigger story. It's part of God's story, working through us to bless the world. So today we are invited to live as God's covenant people. That means being in relationship with God, not just following some religious rules. Allowing God to transform our hearts and minds as we live. And to living in community, serving and caring for others. As we prepare to renew our covenant, let us remember this is not about perfection. It is about presence, God's presence, and our presence in God's work. Let us step forward, not out of fear or duty, but out of love, trust, and joy in the God who calls us his own. The God who first loved us.